Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Earthly Headlines. Today, Smithsonian came out with this cool article talking about what may be possibly is the oldest case of political murder, Bronze Age regicide they're calling it. It comes from this Bronze Age culture that closely follows the bell-beaker culture. I did an episode on the bell-beaker culture way back, I think last summer or something like that. And you guys, it's on this channel, you guys can check it out. But this has to do with the Unetice culture. I think that's how you pronounce it. And they're pretty famous for this one discovery here, the Nebra sky disk. Well, they're famous for a lot of discoveries. I think they were first found in like the late 1800s or something like that. And then they found more stuff in the 1930s. You guys might have seen this before. This is from 1999 that these guys found. And then it passed through a few hands, and they were able to verify its age, though, because it was found with some swords, and they dated the swords to around between 2300 to 1600 BC, which places it firmly in the Bronze Age of the area around Germany. Back to the regicide. So this prince, who they're calling the Prince of Helmsdorf, they found his body and all of he had an elaborate burial. They found basically this huge cemetery filled with farmers, and then they found this Bronze Age building that must be huge in its day. And then they found that the prince was he died in a peculiar way. He had these wounds, these entry wounds from a sword, what appears to be a sword or a dagger or something like that. And then the German state of Saxony-Anhalt, they sent this group of archaeologists and forensic researchers to further investigate this prince's murder. And what they found was a pretty interesting, I guess, scene. It must have been him murdered. And it's in the first paragraph here. It says, nearly 4,000 years ago, a warrior thrust a dagger through the stomach of the so-called Prince of Helmsdorf. The weapon, measuring some 6 inches long, traveled through the victim's spine with such ferocity that it severed multiple arteries. A second blow dealt to the prince's collarbone, split his left shoulder blade, and likely punctured his lung, and then he ended up dying a bloody, bloody death. The most interesting part of this story is not that a guy got murdered, because the Iceman was murdered, and he goes way further than this prince. But there is probably a conspiracy behind his death for a few reasons, which I'll get into in a second. But what attracted me most about this article was not necessarily the prince getting murdered, but the Bronze Age civilization that he belonged to. Like I mentioned earlier, there was a cemetery with the remains of 44 farmers. They had a bunch of bronze artifacts that must have been really expensive to build. 5,057 square foot Bronze Age building, which must have been really significant, among a bunch of other stuff that probably eroded between then and now. So basically, this guy had his own, like, he really was a prince. He was running some sort of fiefdom at the very least, because he probably had, like, those farmers I mentioned earlier working under him. He had a close retinue of people, and the way he defended himself and stuff like that, he was caught by surprise. It must have been someone close to him, so like a bodyguard or a family member or a strategist or somebody close to the royalty. And this is not unheard of, especially if he had a brother or like an uncle or something, some pretender to the throne, some competition rather. Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility for him to get murdered. But this was going on back during the Unetice culture, which basically is an entire civilization that we don't know too much about, except that they had bronze, they had metallurgy, they had a distinct culture that was largely located in Central Europe. So I'm going to show you this map here. Do you guys see these yellow shades? This is basically Central Europe here. And the number 4 in parentheses, anything marked with the number 4 is a Unetice site. So you can see that it's in middle to southwest and southeast Germany, Thuringia, which is in the central Germany, the Czech Republic here, modern day Czech Republic, parts of Poland, and even in as deep as Slovakia here. So they stretched a large swath of land here. And then these other numbers, in case you're wondering, are just other cultures from the Bronze Age as well. I think number 3 is bell-beaker, or it might be number 2, I'm not sure. But anyway, number 4 here. So you can kind of get a visual of how these guys were scattered throughout the geography here. So another interesting thing about the murder was the prince was about 30 to 50 years old. So he's probably about that age where your dad dies, the king will probably die, and you're around that age where you would take over, between 30 and 50 back in those days. His burial following his death suggested that he was highly respected by his subjects, as would be if you were a royal. And then the fact that the culture survived and thrived thereafter is a testament to the culture's resilience. It suggests that there was some sort of stability there that kind of allowed for this further glory, if you want to say, this success of their culture. And as a state, it probably was pretty, something bad probably happened, like the plague or something that wiped them off. Actually, it probably was the plague that wiped them off the map and eventually gave way to our ancestor civilizations. So yeah, they found this disc, like I said earlier, and this is significant because it depicts, some people think it's a Pleiades and other star systems like the Milky Way, and then this stuff wasn't added till later, this stuff on the side here on the right. This is the sun and the moon, and then this is either the Milky Way, something like the Milky Way, or the solar, I forget the name of it, some group of celestial bodies that looks like a bow. This is attributed to the Uniteca culture. I would like to, there's not much, like I said earlier, there's not much known about the civilization, but there's a lot of stuff out in mystery here. For one, they existed, the numbers that they give to this culture are between 2300 to 1600 BC, and the Bronze Age doesn't really kick off until a little bit earlier than that. So there are discovered fully formed within this Bronze Age time period, which starts around 3200 BC, around there. Their contemporaries, we'll just call the fellow Bronze Age civilizations, like the bell-beaker culture and the Aegean culture. They were around at a time when ancient Egypt and the Indus Valley civilization, they were within a stone's throw in history. So there's a lot of questions that come up here. Did they know about each other? What was it? What was their religion exactly? What was the extent of their knowledge? What else is there? Because they keep finding a lot of, they keep exploring more of their stuff. I think the most recent one was a couple years ago in, I think also in Thuringia, and they just keep finding more and more of this stuff. Sometimes it gets attributed to the wrong thing, like the Hallstatt culture. It's been, which is a little bit later in the Iron Age. The main point is that a lot of people are finding more and more stuff from them, and who knows how big their kingdom was, and how many kings they had, and how many generations grew up in this culture, and where did they start out? How far reaching was their influence? Again, not much is made about this culture, so I just thought it was an interesting story. The first regicide does trace to here. There are probably more. I mean, it seems like a really logical conclusion, right? Like the guy you don't want to be in power, you can conjure up a circumstance in which he's not in power, and a lot of time that conjured up process involves killing the guy. I mean, they've done it in China and Korea, Japan, everywhere. They don't need United States, right? They killed Abe Lincoln. Yeah, let me know what you guys think about this article. Let me know if you guys are buff in like the Uniteca culture and Czechoslovakia and German history. I'm very interested in that. And even if you know anything more about this case or the Nebra sky disk, they seem like a really interesting culture, and even the cultures their contemporary cultures that live geographically within arm's reach of them, so to speak. I wonder what gods that they worshipped and what literary works they had, if any. There's stuff like the Voynich manuscript that really puzzles me, that no one's been able to translate or crack the code of their language. Some people, even so far as some people think it's a fake, which I don't think it's a fake. It seems pretty legit. The story behind the Voynich manuscript is so interesting. I wonder if one of those Bronze Age civilizations had included some cultural works or some artwork or whatever it is that produced the Voynich manuscript, for example. It doesn't have to be the Voynich manuscript, but something along those lines. There seems to be an out-of-place artifact If they thought that with the Antikythera device as well, they found this, what they thought was a compass in the Mediterranean Sea, and they didn't know who created it or how someone would come about inventing basically was a very, very primitive computer. They must have known a lot more than we give them credit, I guess, for what they've accomplished and what they may have accomplished. We're talking 4,000 plus years ago. I'm like, who knows what could deteriorate in that time. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about the article. Leave more comments, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.